Your life falls apart on the most ordinary of days. My name is Alex Wright, 39, a Navy SEAL team commander. My wife, Catherine, 34, heads sales at a major pharmaceutical company. We have a son, Jake, 15, a smart, observant kid who learned about betrayal far too early. I thought I knew everything about war after spending 10 years in combat zones. But the real war began when I discovered that my wife and my best friend, yacht club owner Michael Crawford, had decided to destroy everything I held dear. Kandahar was melting in the heat. The white-hot sun turned the military base into hell's annex, but I loved this time of day. In the pre-dawn silence, when even war seemed to take a breather, you could quietly check your email and write home. A familiar ritual that connected me to normal life somewhere thousands of miles away. Jake's email arrived at 4:37 a.m. Something was wrong. My son never wrote this hour. Usually, his messages came in the evening, full of excited stories about school victories, squim practice, and new friends. But this email was different. Dad, sorry for writing so early. I need to tell you something, and it's going to hurt. I thought long and hard about whether I had the right to say this, but you taught me that truth matters above all else, even when it wounds. I set aside my half-finished coffee. Something in the tone of this email made me tense up. That same instinct that had saved my life so many times on missions. Mom's seeing Uncle Mike. I know for sure. It's been going on for 3 months. At first, I didn't want to believe it, looked for excuses. Maybe it's just friendship. Maybe I misunderstood something. But yesterday, I accidentally saw their messages on Mom's phone when she asked me to order pizza. The hot Afghan air suddenly turned ice cold. Mike Crawford, my best friend since BD/S training, best man at my wedding, Jake's godfather, the man I trust with my life, had trusted with my family while I was away on deployments. They're planning to sail away on his new yacht this weekend, a 3-day cruise around the Dragon Islands. I overheard their conversation. Mom was laughing, saying it would be their first real vacation together. Without me. Without you. Dad, she said she finally feels truly happy. I read the email over and over until the letters blurred before my eyes. Each word hit like a sniper's bullet. The Dragon Islands. I knew that archipelago better than my own home. We'd conducted maritime operations training there. Dozens of uninhabited islands, treacherous currents, dangerous reefs. Perfect for a romantic getaway, and perfect for revenge. Dad, there's something else. I hacked Mom's email. Sorry, you always said that's wrong, but I had to know the truth. They've been planning this for a while. Uncle Mike. He said they'll tell you everything after the cruise. That they'll file for divorce as soon as you return. He's already found them a house in Florida. Says he'll take care of me, become my new father. The rage came in waves, but not the blind fury that clouds your judgment. No, this was the cold, calculated rage of a professional. The kind that makes your mind sharper, analyzing every detail, calculating each move. Hang in there, son. I wrote a brief reply, while already opening another chat. Hey, Johnny, remember how I pulled your ass out of that mess in Herat? Time to return the favor. I need intel on all yacht routes through the Dragon Islands this weekend. Also, give me the specs for a new Ocean Master 45 yacht. This year's model, white hull, registered to Michael Crawford. The plan started forming on its own, like a tactical map for a combat operation. 15 years in special operations taught me one simple truth. There are no invulnerable targets, only poorly planned operations. They want a romantic cruise? They'll get one. One they'll remember for the rest of their lives. I spent the next 3 hours on my laptop, studying archipelago maps. Every island, every bay, every reef, everything could be useful. Paid special attention to the weather forecast. Sudden storms often pass over the islands this time of year. Perfect conditions for what I had in mind. Colonel, permission to speak, sir. I entered the command tent at exactly 800, requesting emergency leave for family matters. Colonel Harris looked up from his papers. His piercing gaze drilled into my face. 25 years of service had taught him to read people like open books. Family matters, you say? He drummed his fingers on the desk. Something serious. My son, sir. He's having problems. Need to get back urgently. Right. He leaned forward. I know that look. Seen it on guys who were about to do something stupid. Don't ruin your life. No, sir. Just want to help my son. He looked at me for a long moment, then slowly nodded. 3 days, Captain. Be back here Monday. And remember, whatever you're planning, there are some things you can't fix. Yes, sir. Permission to leave? Stepping out of the command tent, I pulled out my phone. A few quick calls to old Marine Corps buddies, and the preparations began. An inflatable boat with a motor would be waiting in a small cove. Diving gear would be delivered tomorrow morning. Jake would send the exact departure time. That evening, packing my bag, I mentally rehearsed the operation details. Everything as usual, just a different target. Not a terrorist in the mountains, but my own wife and best friend on a luxury yacht. Funny how life turns sometimes. They're leaving tomorrow at 1100. The last message from my son came as I was boarding the military transport plane. Be careful, Dad, and make them regret it. All of it. Looking through the window at the stars drifting below, I thought about life's ironies. For 10 years, I'd fought in foreign countries, protecting my home from enemies, while the real enemy had been living in my own house, sleeping in my bed, smiling as she welcomed me home from deployments. Don't worry, son, I wrote back. Dad's going to teach them one simple truth. Never mess with a man who spent 15 years learning the art of turning other people's lives into hell. The plane turned east and I closed my eyes, mentally preparing for the operation. Probably the most important operation of my life. After all, revenge is a dish best served cold, and I was planning to make it absolutely freezing. A good plan is like fine whiskey. The longer it ages, the better the result. I wasn't going to act as soon as they set sail. Let them enjoy the first day of their romantic getaway. Let them believe in their security, thinking they're far from all their problems. The Dragon Islands were perfect for my plan. Dozens of uninhabited specks of land scattered across the ocean like dominoes, far from busy routes and prying eyes. According to Johnny's intel, they planned to anchor for the night in a small lagoon between the islands. The perfect spot for privacy and the perfect spot for sabotage. When their yacht turns into a useless piece of fiberglass in the middle of a storm, they'll have only one path to salvation. A tiny island where I'd already prepared a special welcome for them. I watched their yacht all day, keeping a safe distance. The Ocean Master 45 looked impressive. 45 feet of perfectly calculated lines, pristine white hull, teak deck, a $2 million toy. Mike always loved beautiful things, especially other people's belongings. On deck, Catherine and Mike played the perfect couple, champagne, swimsuits, kisses at sunset. A nauseating spectacle, especially when you know the truth. By evening of the second day, they dropped anchor in the picturesque lagoon, just as I predicted. Romantic dinner by candlelight, music from expensive speakers. Mike always knew how to set the mood. I wondered if he'd courted Catherine the same way, while I was risking my life in the mountains of Afghanistan. The night was moonless, as if nature itself decided to participate in my operation. I left my boat in a secluded cove of a neighboring island and slipped into the dark water. My old military wetsuit was far less romantic, but perfect for a night dive. The current was weak, making my task substantially easier. I covered the 50 yards to the yacht in under a minute, moving underwater with smooth fin kicks. Sorry, beautiful, I whispered, approaching the yacht. Nothing personal. Your owner just picked the wrong woman to have an affair with. The vessel schematics Johnny provided proved accurate. The technical compartment was at the stern, just above the waterline. The lock yielded to the simplest pick. Expensive yachts rarely have serious security. Their owners care more about looks than safety. Inside smelled of fresh paint and expensive wood. I pulled out a small flashlight, shielding the beam with my palm. Quiet breathing from the cabin indicated the sleeping couple. Wonder if traders have nightmares? We'll soon find out. Now, what do we have here? Navigation system, autopilot, radio. Mike always bragged about knowing yachts inside and out. Wonder if he'll notice his precious equipment didn't fail by accident. Oops, I accidentally spilled some seawater on the main navigation system board. Salt water and electronics don't mix. Every sailor knows that. Now, for the radio, a couple of cut wires would turn it into a useless piece of plastic. Autopilot. Sorry, buddy, but you're taking a vacation too. Next stop was the engine room. Modern yachts are packed with electronics, but at their heart lies a good old diesel engine, which incidentally really doesn't like water in its fuel system. There we go. I carefully loosened several connections. By morning, condensation water will mix with the fuel, and your romantic cruise will get much more interesting. The anchor was my final touch. Who would have thought the emergency anchor release system could accidentally trigger at the most inconvenient moment, especially with a little help? Having finished my work, I slipped back into the water as quietly as I'd arrived. Stars were already fading, dawn was approaching. And not just dawn. Heavy clouds on the horizon promised the storm the meteorologist had predicted. Perfect timing for the next part of my plan. By noon, I was in position, a small island with an excellent view of their route. The wind was picking up, waves growing higher. On deck, Catherine, in a white bikini, was still sipping something from a tall glass. Mike stood at the helm, a smug smile plastered across his face. Wonder what they're thinking about now? Their future? How cleverly they'd gotten rid of the annoying military husband. The first raindrops hit their deck around 2 in the afternoon. I watched Mike frown as he looked at the sky. Yeah, buddy, this isn't the gentle breeze you're used to on your pleasure cruises. This is a real ocean storm. The waves grew with frightening speed. The yacht was no longer gliding through the water but fighting it like a stubborn boxer against an opponent's defense. Even through binoculars, I could see Mike struggling with the helm. Autopilot not working. What a shame. And ahead lay the best part, the treacherous reefs of the Dragon Islands. A thunderclap rolled across the ocean like artillery fire. The sky turned black, transforming day into twilight. Now they're surely trying to contact the Coast Guard, but the radio's dead, right? And the navigation system's showing nonsense instead of coordinates. I observed their yacht like a sniper watching a target. There, they realized the engine was failing. There, they discovered they had no communication. And now, yes, right about now, they must have discovered the anchor was gone. Now their fate rested solely in nature's hands, and my plan, of course. They noticed the first reef too late. The impact wasn't severe, but enough to breach the hull. I watched Mike scrambling around the deck, trying to assess the damage. Catherine didn't look so elegant anymore, her evening attire soaked through, makeup running down her face. And then it happened. What I'd been waiting for all this time. A gigantic wave lifted the yacht and slammed it onto a second reef. The crack of the breaking hull was audible even through the storm's roar. The Ocean Master 45 shuddered through its entire frame and began listing to starboard. They managed to stay afloat for about an hour. Not bad for an inexperienced crew. Mike tried to restart the engine. Catherine bailed water, but the outcome was predetermined. When they finally lowered the life raft, the yacht was already half submerged. The current and wind carried their raft exactly where I calculated, toward a small uninhabited island off the usual routes. The perfect place for the next part of my plan. Welcome home, I whispered, watching them drag the raft onto the sandy beach. Catherine was sobbing, her designer dress reduced to wet rags. Mike, covered in coral scratches, collapsed heavily onto the sand. They looked pathetic and scared. Two city people thrown into an extreme situation. Well, welcome to my world. A world where each day could be your last. Where there are no luxury yachts and champagne at sunset. Instead, there's a fight for survival and a face-to-face meeting with your own fears. And I make sure they learn these lessons well. Very well. Dawn painted the sky the color of dried blood over the island. From my hideout, I watched the happy couple trying to set up camp on the beach. Their romantic adventure was rapidly turning into a survival struggle, though their real trials were only beginning. First, as I'd anticipated, they went searching for fresh water. After the storm and a night on the beach, thirst was becoming a real problem. It was amusing to watch Mike trying to play the experienced tracker, pushing through the jungle in his designer shorts. Catherine stumbled behind him, her once perfect manicure hopelessly ruined. They found the spring after about an hour. Crystal clear water bubbling up from the ground. A true treasure for shipwreck survivors. I barely suppressed a smile watching them drink greedily. The special powder I dissolved in the spring during the night was completely tasteless. The first symptoms would appear in about 3 hours, enough time for them to fill all their containers with this life-giving water. Oh God, Mike, this is a miracle. Catherine's voice trembled with relief. Finally, clean water. We'll definitely get out of here now. You have a plan, right? Of course, baby, Mike feigned confidence he clearly didn't feel. I promised to take care of you. We just need to wait a couple of days. After all, I don't pay those hefty yacht club membership fees for nothing. They'll definitely organize a search. A couple of days. Her voice cracked. But I have an important presentation on Monday, and my appointment with the esthetician. God, what have you gotten me into? Catherine felt the symptoms first. Around noon, she started complaining about stomach cramps. Mike held out longer, but by evening, it hit him too. Severe diarrhea, an unpleasant ordeal, even in comfortable conditions, but on an uninhabited island without toilet paper or basic amenities. What the hell is happening? Catherine doubled over from another spasm, her perfectly styled hair now hanging in greasy strands. This water, it was crystal clear. Mike, do something. You promised everything would be perfect. Shut up, for God's sake. He could barely stand himself. You think this is easy for me? Damn island, damn yacht. This is all because of your idea to have a romantic getaway. My idea. You suggested this cruise. Let's sail away from everyone, just you and me. How beautifully you sang when you wanted to get me into bed. Well, you didn't put up much resistance, did you? Oh, my husband's always on deployment. I'm so lonely. Playing the poor abandoned wife while just waiting for a chance to jump into bed with a rich lover. By the third day, food shortage began taking its toll. Their clothes, crusted with salt from the seawater, had become rigid as sandpaper, chafing their skin into bloody blisters. All they managed to find were a few coconuts and some berries they were afraid to eat. Their beach romance was rapidly descending into nightmare territory. We need to do something. Catherine no longer tried to maintain appearances, smearing tears across her dirty cheeks. You said you were an experienced yachtsman. Bragged about your regattas, your damn trophies. But what can you actually do? Can't even build a proper shelter. What did you expect, princess? Mike grimaced in pain and disgust. Thought this would be like your romance novels? That a handsome rich lover would solve all your problems. New yacht, new house, new life. I saw how your eyes lit up when I talked about my money. This isn't about money. You promised love, passion, real feelings. But you're just a pathetic coward who can't even. Shut up. You think I didn't see you snooping through my bank statements? How you kept asking about my investments? Honey, is it true your yacht costs $2 million and the house in Florida? Is it really on the beach? You were ready to do anything to escape your boring life with your military husband. On the fourth day came what I'd been waiting for with special anticipation. Mike, trying to play the provider, ventured into the thicket for fruit. His scream shattered the island's morning quiet. The Malayan pit viper, one of the archipelago's most venomous snakes, doesn't like its territory disturbed. God, it hurts. Mike writhed on the sand, his legs swollen beyond recognition. Call for help. Do something, you useless bitch. How? With what? Catherine burst into hysterical laughter. Maybe send a smoke signal with my designer purse? Or call rescuers on my drowned phone? You were so cool, so confident. Baby, I'll arrange everything. We'll live like royalty. But really, you're nothing. Go to hell. He tried to grab her, but only fell sideways. You know what? You're not even that good in bed. Think I really loved you. You were just an easy target. A bored military wife ready to jump into bed with the first guy who promised her a fancy life. Oh yeah, she grabbed an empty water bottle. And you, big shot at a small yacht club. Bragging about your connections, your money, but can't even properly captain a yacht. You know what? I regret not choosing your business partner. Now he's really got money. Or, impotent. Even in bed, all you could do was brag about your regatta victories. By evening, their relationship had completely deteriorated into mutual hatred. Catherine, exhausted from diarrhea and hunger, sat apart, hugging her knees. Mike, his legs swollen, was delirious from pain and fever. I settled in comfortably, preparing for the night's performance. In the darkness, their fears would intensify hundredfold. Every rustle, every night bird's cry would make them jump. And I would make sure this night was especially rich in frightening sounds. I wondered if they suspected that all their misfortunes weren't just a chain of coincidences, that somewhere nearby, in the jungle's shadows, lurked the director of this spectacle. Well, they'd find out soon enough. Very soon. The fifth day on the island greeted them with a tropical downpour. Catherine and Mike, worn down by illness, hunger, and mutual hatred, huddled under their hastily constructed shelter of palm fronds. No trace remained of their romantic idyll, just two broken people who couldn't even look at each other. Time to end the show. I retrieved the specially prepared costume for my cage, a tattered loincloth, ancient tattoos applied with special paint, matted hair caked with mud. The finishing touch, a necklace of shark teeth, bought at a souvenir shop and aged in seawater. The makeup for the final act was ready. Look, Catherine's hoarse voice cut through the rain's patter. There's someone there. I knew what they'd see, a dark figure flitting between the trees. Close enough to frighten, but far enough to prevent them from making out details. A classic special ops technique, make the target feel the presence of danger. God, are those locals? Mike tried to stand, but his swollen leg wouldn't support him. Hey, help. We're here. Shut up, you idiot, Catherine hissed. What if they're cannibals? I've read about this. Wild tribes on lost islands. I approached their camp slowly, moving as I'd been taught in special operations training, fluid like a shadow. The ancient spear in my hands, actually a prop from the same souvenir shop, added authenticity to the image. Oh God, he's coming here. Catherine pressed herself against a palm trunk. Mike, do something. What can I do? He looked around frantically. I can't even stand. This is all your fault. If it wasn't for your thirst for adventure. I burst from the undergrowth suddenly, letting out a guttural cry. The effect exceeded all expectations. Catherine screamed so loud birds took flight from nearby trees, while Mike collapsed onto the sand, trying to crawl away. Wait, we're rich. We have money. Mike frantically pulled an expensive ring from his finger. Here, take it. Just don't hurt us. I approached slowly, examining them with feigned primitive curiosity. The makeup and paint completely altered my features. Even if they knew me well, they'd hardly recognize me now. No, please. Catherine backed away as I moved toward her. Mike, help me. But Mike just curled into a ball, trembling with fear. There it was, the moment of truth, faced with real danger. His self-confidence had vanished completely. A pathetic coward who could only brag about yachts and seduce other men's wives. With one leap, I was beside Catherine. In the next second, a rough cloth bag covered her head, an old military technique for disorienting prisoners. She struggled in my arms, but years of training had done their job. Within a minute, she was securely bound. No. Wait. Mike tried to crawl after us. Take me. I have more money. I'll give you everything. I let out another guttural cry, and he froze, whimpering in fear. The last thing he saw was me disappearing into the jungle, carrying away his lover. His death-like scream echoed across the island when I threw the spear in his direction, deliberately missing by a couple of inches. In the boat, Catherine grew quiet, only occasionally sobbing under the back. I rowed steadily, letting fear do its work. The first rays of dawn were already coloring the horizon when she finally spoke, quietly at first, then more confidently. Listen, I'm a wealthy woman. Very wealthy. I have money, jewelry. Her voice trembled, but took on a wheedling tone. I can pay. How much do you want? 10,000? 50? I'll get any amount, just let me go. I maintained silence, continuing to row. The shore was already visible in the distance. 100,000. Hysteria crept into her voice. I'll get you $100,000. My lover, I mean my friend, he owns a yacht club. He has money, connections. I let out a guttural laugh, exactly like the one I'd frightened them with on the island. She shuddered and changed tactics. Listen, her voice turned honeyed seductive. You're a man. I'm a beautiful woman. We could make a deal. I'll do anything you want. Anything, understand. Any desires. What a piece of work she was. Even now, terrified for her life, she thought she could buy or seduce her captor. I kept rowing in silence. You're silent. Fine. I get it. You like games. Hysteria crept back into her voice. But remember, my husband's military, special forces. He'll find you wherever you hide. They'll destroy you. He'll... Why look so far? I finally spoke in my normal voice, pulling the bag from her head. Your husband's already here, dear. For the first few seconds, she couldn't believe her eyes. In the pre-dawn twilight, among the exotic tattoos, emerged her husband's familiar features. The ancient savage transformed into the special ops warrior who'd fought 3 years in the mountains of Afghanistan. Ah! Her scream pierced the morning air. She thrashed hysterically, trying to crawl away, but the ropes held firm. No, no, this is impossible. You're supposed to be in Afghanistan. This is a nightmare, just a nightmare. Nightmare? I smirked, continuing to row. No, dear, the nightmare was on the island. This is the awakening. Bitter, isn't it? How was that spring water? Refreshing, right? Want another drink. This was all you. Her eyes widened with horror and understanding. The yacht, the accident, the snake. Oh God! She doubled over in a dry heave, but her stomach was empty. Tears streamed down her face, smearing the dirt. Surprise, darling. Thought I wouldn't find out. Thought you could have an affair with my friend while I was at war. How did you like Mike in the role of heroic protector? Impressive, wasn't he? Alex, please. She switched to a pleading whisper. I can explain everything. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I didn't mean to. He seduced me. He promised. What exactly did he promise? My voice turned icy. The yacht? House in Florida? Beautiful life without a military husband? I heard everything, sweetheart. Every word you said on the island. About how you despise my service. How you dreamed of a rich lover. How you planned to get rid of the dead weight. No, that's not what I meant. I wasn't myself. It was the island, the heat, the illness. You know I loved you. I shook my head. Every day in the mountains I thought about you. Kept your photos, wrote letters. And all this time you. Forgive me. She lunged toward me as far as the ropes allowed. Please forgive me. Let's start over. I swear. I'll change. I'll be the most faithful wife. Just don't leave me. Too late, dear. Far too late. You know what's most amusing? I was planning to retire. For you. Thought I'd had enough of war. Time to come home to family. While you were planning a new life with someone else. Her sobs turned to hysterical laughter. You're a monster. You're worse than terrorists. At least they kill honestly, but you played with us like a cat with mice. I'll tell everyone. They'll lock you up. Tell them? I raised an eyebrow. And what exactly will you tell? How you cheated on your husband with his friend? How you planned to run off with his money? Or how your lover turned out to be a worthless coward who abandoned you at the first sign of danger? Go ahead, tell them. I'll even help. I have some very interesting video recordings from the island. Think your colleagues would be curious to see them. She went limp, as if all the air had suddenly left her. In the pre-dawn twilight, her face looked gray, old. What happens now? Her voice dropped to a whisper. Now that's the interesting part. I leaned forward. We're going home now. You'll pack your things and disappear from my life. Forever. file for divorce. I won't object. But remember, one word about what happened on the island, one attempt to blacken my name or turn our son against me, and those recordings will be seen by everyone. Your colleagues, friends, management. Wonder what the board of directors would say seeing their successful manager crawling around an island with diarrhea or offering her body to a savage. Hashtag epilogue beginning. 3 months later, I sat in my office reviewing divorce papers. Catherine hadn't resisted, silently signed all documents, declining even her rightful share of property, though her reputation lay in ruins anyway. Someone, perhaps fate itself, had leaked photos from the island to the network. Nothing compromising, just a few shots of a high society lady in tattered clothes crawling on a beach. That was enough. Her career collapsed overnight. Nobody wanted to deal with a woman who'd become a laughingstock in business circles. The last I heard, she'd taken a job as a realtor in a small office on the outskirts of town, selling cheap apartments to those who couldn't afford anything better. Mike fared even worse. The rescuers found him after 2 days, gray-haired, trembling with fear, raving about a terrifying savage from the jungle. But that was just the beginning of his downfall. The yacht wasn't insured. Had lied to Catherine about that, trying to impress her. The $2 million loan became an unbearable burden. Then the health problems started. The snake bite, improperly healed leg, consequences of poisoning, and nervous breakdown. He became a pitiful wreck, barely able to move with a crutch. The yacht club had to be sold for pennies on the dollar to pay for treatment. Now he subsists on disability benefits in a one-room apartment, waking every night from nightmares about the mysterious savage. Dad, I'm home. Tom's voice interrupted my thoughts. He'd returned from his hand-to-hand combat training, a new interest that emerged after this whole affair. How'd it go, son? Coach says I have talent. He smiled, and in that smile, I saw myself at his age. You know, I understood why you always said strength comes with responsibility. It's not about knowing how to fight. It's about knowing how to protect what's precious to you. I looked at my son with pride. Over these months, he'd matured from a boy into a young man. His mother's betrayal could have broken him, but instead, it tempered his character. She called today, he said matter-of-factly, but I noticed his shoulders tense. Wanted to meet. Talked about some expensive restaurant. Gifts. I refused. Regret it. No, he shook his head. You know when I helped you track them, record their conversations. I wasn't just helping my father. I was learning to be a man. A real man who doesn't betray his principles. I walked to the window. In the military base yard, children played. Young officers hurried about their business. Life went on as usual. But something had changed, as if some higher justice had been restored. You know what's the most important thing I learned from this story, Dad? Tom stood beside me. That love isn't just feelings. It's also a choice. Choosing loyalty, honor, dedication every day. And when you betray these values, you betray yourself. I hugged my son's shoulders. He's almost my height now. Soon he'll be fully grown. He'll enter the military academy as he dreamed. Become an officer, a real officer, for whom honor and duty aren't empty words. You're right, son, and you know what? Sometimes you need to go through hell to understand a simple truth. Justice exists. Sometimes it just needs a little help. We stood at the window, father and son, two guardians, two keepers of eternal values, while somewhere in the city, a former socialite sold cheap apartments, and her ex-lover trembled for nightmares in his miserable hovel. Justice had prevailed. And this wasn't just revenge. It was the restoration of world order, where betrayal is always punishable and loyalty and honor triumph. Come on, son. I patted his shoulder. Time for the shooting range. An officer needs to know not just how to protect his loved ones, but how to shoot straight too. Tom beamed, and in his eyes, I saw the reflection of my own youth, my belief in justice, my readiness to protect what's dear. A new generation of guardians was taking their place in line, and I knew these values were in good hands.